Greetings, fellow keepers. It's Soniel here with the Keeper's Corner, and we're going to be continuing our look here at the Gathering Storm campaign. We covered Chapter 7 in our last video. We're going to be doing Chapter 8 here by request. This is the Covenant Assassin boss stage. The Covenant Assassins gain attack as they are hit with active skills or abilities. So as a result, we're going to want to use some off-target damage over time on those guys. The Warlock and or the Ninja are more than sufficient in that regard. Most people are going to have the Warlock available to them rather than the Ninja. However, if you haven't noticed, the Ninja and the Valkyrie are an ongoing theme here with a lot of the teams I use. So if you're able to start working on those heroes and getting them up to par so that you can use them in some of these harder campaigns, it'll definitely be worth it. With this particular stage, this team here using the Valkyrie, the War Master, the Ninja, and the Cleric will take care of it fairly easily. And we'll see when we get started some of the targeting differences and options in terms of which monsters you attack and how you handle each stage will determine whether or not that Covenant Guardian will rip you to shreds from those attack boosts that he gets. But since we can't use the Valkyrie and Ninja on everyone, we're going to go ahead and go with a little bit of an easier build here, featuring the Warlock, the Knight, the War Master, and the Cleric. You could absolutely supplant the Druid into this in place of the War Master here if you need that double healing set up, depending on your gear. It may or may not be necessary. Of course, the War Master is going to increase your cooldown reductions as well as your damage on your damage over time skills, which are going to help us take down that boss. Now for the gearing on this, once again, you could probably go up to the Shell of Protection on the Knight. Of course, if you do have the Strength of Legend, that is the premier advised piece for this build, the perfect katana as usual. With the Warlock, if you don't have a Wand of Endless Suffering, we'll go in here and look at the craftables. You may be able to do it with one of the lesser wands here, the Frozen Wand, or maybe one of these purples. That being said, because we need to get so much damage over time without hitting the Covenant Guardian himself, the Wand of Endless Suffering is going to be the premier option here. And then for robes, of course, as we covered in our last video, Vicious Vestments, the Coat of Quickening are both viable. The Raiment of Radiance, which a few of you might have gotten from your guild shop, is great for survivability before the 8th round robes are available. So again, you want to go with just your best damage and defensive gear on each one of these guys. With your Cleric, you're really going to need an Ambusher's Hacker in this one. You're absolutely going to need the cooldown reduction from the Ambushers as well as the War Master to get the cleanses off that you need. And in that regard, you could go with a Chain Skin. A Mithril Mail might not be high enough armor and resistance to survive some of the monsters in these stages. But again, this is the core setup here, and we'll see when we get through these stages. There's a couple nuances to the monster setups and the monster abilities that might be throwing some people off and making this more difficult than it has to be. The first stage here is pretty straightforward. It doesn't really matter who you target first. The Covenant Guardian here in the middle is going to end up throwing a taunt that'll stay up for most of the match, or most of the floor here. So we want to just go through this one as quick as we can. Of course, our main DPS source is going to be from the Warlock, but we want to make sure that we're putting up inspirations and whatnot so we can keep up with the overloads from these enemies. Very akin to the enemies in the other parts of these stages, their overload cannot be dispelled, so don't waste your time trying to bring in a spell sword to get rid of that. Now, that's not to say the spell sword doesn't have some value with the energy reserves, but definitely, like I said, you're going to want to try and bring some damage over time into this one. And typically you're going to want to focus your cleanse on your DPS first if your tank is surviving. If your tank's getting battered, absolutely cleanse them first. But as you see here, the Knight's not getting beat up too badly by these guys. So we're going to make sure that we throw that cleanse onto the Warlock so she can keep getting out her full damage potential. Now, when looking at this team versus the Ninja Valkyrie team that I had showed to begin with, you'll notice that I am struggling to gain soul energy here. Ball of Darkness and Righteous Call are going to be pretty much your two main sources of soul energy. With a high-level Wand of Endless Suffering, Ball of Darkness can be a great generator, very similar to Righteous Call, that with a max Ambusher's Hacker, it can be a pretty good generator. The value in the Valkyrie is that she doesn't need either of those. Her skill, the Light of Wrath, which is a straight soul energy boost, very similar to the Spell Sword's energy reserves. She can just tick that off repeatedly, and especially if you're using the Druid and the War Master, you can either invigor her and let the Call to Arms also buff her, or you can invigor the War Master for additional stacks of Call to Arms. But either way, you're getting so many casts of Light of Wrath that you're going to get max soul energy a lot sooner, and you're going to be able to just spam your shield tactics and your inspiration and your rapid regen, whatever the case may be. And then one of the other major upsides with her is that if she happens to die when you're using her as a frontline tank, now keep in mind she's going to be gaining a lot of extra HP from Shield of Wrath, but if she does die, she's got that on-death burst damage that's going to, in these 6 and 7 and 9 enemy rooms, is going to typically guarantee you the soul energy you need for another revive. So again, that's one of the reasons I find her to be so valuable. Additionally, at 5 and 6 stars or so, the Light of Wrath gives enough soul energy to cast Poison Smoke Bomb just about. You usually have to wait for 1 incoming attack or 2 incoming attacks or 1 outgoing attack to get that little extra sliver you'll need. Now, we see these Covenant Guardians starting to show up in this Chapter 8 here, right in the second floor, and the third floor is going to feature 3 Covenant Guardians and 3 Vile Priests. Now, typically, when attacking towers and things like that, I know a lot of us instinctively target Vile Priests. In this next stage, we do not want to target the Vile Priests. You have to target the Covenant Guardians first. The Vile Priests have Magic Jar, which is the Necromancer ability, that when you kill them, they come back with full health. So even if you target them quick, you're not getting them off the stage. But additionally, the Covenant Guardians gain attack, and they have, very similar to the Thieves in Venom, they'll stack lightning damage onto their weapons. And if you let them live for too long, they're going to shred your whole team with their Twin Strike before you even get to the boss stage. So absolutely, when you get into this next stage, the third floor here we'll see in a moment, you want to make sure that you're targeting the Covenant Guardians in the front first. Now again, that's another place where the Valkyrie is super valuable because you get the Angelic Volley as a pseudo AoE skill that's going to hit that whole row of Guardians for you. You get the Melt Armor that at higher levels, especially with Battle Fury stacks, does a ton of damage in PvE. And all in all, that along with the Ninja's Stun is going to help beat that floor without really taking any damage at all. Now the value here, of course, is that we do have our shield tactics and inspiration to help boost us up, and we do have the Taunt of the Knight, keeping the single target attacks and whatnot away from our backline, which with the Valkyrie setup, it is a little more catered to higher level players because you kind of need epic armor on all 4 of your heroes when you're not using a taunt. Of course, because they're going to be sucking up damage from so many different sources. But I do want to try and highlight that team a little more. I try to avoid it so I'm not showing stuff that people can't use. But you really, really, really want to start working on getting those heroes up for some of this harder PvE content and for quick kill tower teams. And there's some niche value in hero battles for those heroes as well. The Valkyrie, especially in lower level brackets, is absolutely dominant in PvP. But as we see here, these are those Covenant Guardians and Vile Priests we were talking about. Again, we usually want to avoid sneak attacks in towers and PvE, like I said, instinctively. But in this, we're going to have to just suck them up. And if we need to throw a revive on the Knight in this stage, it's not that bad. But we absolutely have to get rid of these Covenant Guardians before they turn into super-powered monsters. And now I would, one thing I forgot to do and I forgot to talk about is I still have Righteous Call equipped here, partially for the soul energy gain and because I know I can withstand it personally. If you're struggling with the boss gaining too much attack rating, you're going to want to remove Righteous Call, you're going to want to remove Heavy Bash in place of Take Charge, which I've already done here on the War Master. But you basically don't want any random AoE skills knocking that backline with the boss Covenant Guardian there, because that's going to cause him to gain just ridiculous amounts of attack. He also has the Magic Jar ability like these Vile Priests. Speaking of, the stab on these Vile Priests is a stun or something elemental that causes the counter on the Valkyrie to go off. So if you're using a 5 or 6 star Valkyrie with a max Dark Defender, they're going to probably kill themselves just from attacking her with stab. So again, it's just showing the tremendous value that the Valkyrie has in a lot of these PvE campaigns. And part of that is, this one in particular was made by Mr. Rohan, as all of them were, but he developed a lot of these long before the Valkyrie and whatnot existed. Now here we are with this Covenant Guardian, and what we're going to want to do to make sure that we don't power him up too much is focus all of our single target damage right here onto the Covenant Guardians and then onto this mid row. The Ball of Darkness, unfortunately, is going to throw some more hits on him than we'd like. That's part of why I prefer the Ninja here. You do get those extra cycles from the stun on the Ninja. But the Ninja can have Shuriken Throw, Shadow Slash, Shadow Step. Basically have 3 single target abilities that aren't going to be powering up the Covenant Guardian while he's still ticking away with the damage. That being said, the Shadow Sensor does have a better overall damage output, so the damage over time on that is going to be fairly sufficient for taking down this guy's first health bar. Usually around the time we kill these 2 rows of enemies, he should be getting down to being killed for the first time, and then he will Magic Jar and come back at us with a fresh set of those attack boosts, and at that point it won't be too difficult to single target attack him. Now you'll see the Twin Strike here is the trouble ability with this guy. The poison can definitely damage the Knight fairly significantly. But we're going to want to once again throw our Cleanse here onto the Warlock. The Knight is hanging in there not too badly. You got to be careful with choosing those, like I said. I particularly knew that I had Powerful Heal and Ball of Darkness coming up, so that I would at least have the Soul Energy for a Revive available to me if I were to need it. And again, like I said in the Chapter 7 video, you're going to know your hero's potential better than I can. Predict it in terms of soul generation, where your cycles are going to land and whatnot. So you want to make those decisions based on your own heroes, depending on who you cleanse and when you use each ability and so on and so forth. But as we said, as we're starting to clear these guys out, his last little bit of health here is getting down. Unfortunately, he dodged one of our Shadow Sensors. Ball of Darkness is undodgeable. The Shadow Sensor is a dodgeable ability, but he's got just a little sliver left. So we'll start stacking up our shield tactics and our inspiration in preparation for taking him on one-on-one. Because the taunt has been up, all of those take charges that have been going off have been stacking up as much as they can. I think they can get 2 stacks, maybe 3 going on these backline guys. So that's going to help if he happens to break through the night and you don't have a revive available. That should give you just enough to survive a Twin Strike. The Twin Strikes can get absolutely devastating if you let him get too much HP gained. But again, the damage over time is what's really going to save us. As you saw, we went through that whole first cycle with him without barely letting him gain any damage, or attack rating rather, from those active hits. And 508 he took from that one. The first time I did this, I struggled with it quite a bit because I was using just kind of a burst kill team, and I think he got up to like plus 2400 or something, and he was twin striking me for 600 to 800 apiece with epic armor equipped. But there we have it. That's Chapter 8 of the Gathering Storm. I hope that helped you guys out. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure, if you haven't, to subscribe to the Keeper's Corner. Hit a thumbs up on this video. Comment with anything you'd like to see. And we'll be coming back and doing 9 and 10. And we'll be doing a run through on 11 as well, so people can see a full clear on that one. And we will see you guys on the next one.